And before we start, actually, I am glad the physical location that we're at right now, because we got a good view of Andy Jackson behind. As we all know, Andy Jackson was a great warrior who didn't have trouble speaking his mind, and he certainly was a great president. So I'm honored to have Andy Jackson standing behind me as I'm doing this presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, I do appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you today. We have been addressing continually a lot of problems in Iraq, how the country was driven into the ground by Nouri al-Maliki, and the continuing, never-ending, hideous influence of the Iranian government over Iran. The residents were moved from Camp Ashraf to Camp Liberty with assurances by Ambassador Dan Fried and the UN Ambassador Martin Kobler they will be properly protected and taken care of. As we know, it was supposed to be a temporary location, transfer location. Well, to me, 3 years is not temporary. The Civil War between the North and the South of America was fought in just a little over that amount of time that it's taken us not to get the job done, get the residents out of Camp Liberty. Also, you've heard me continually address the cover-ups by our own U.S. State Department. The worst one is probably the Ashraf massacre, where 52 residents, property protectors, custodians, were butchered by members of Nouri al-Maliki's SWAT team. I say that with total confidence because I have the report that I completed, all 220 plus pages investigation. I found out when I was doing this investigation, I was the only person ever to interview any of the survivors of the Ashraf massacre. Nobody from the United Nations interviewed them, nobody from U.S. State Department, nobody from the Iraqi government. And yet, U.S. State Department is ready to say there is no evidence the Iraqi government was involved. I have the photographs of the SWAT team members of the Iraqi military that committed the murders. Any members of the media that would like a copy of this report, I do have a spare one with me, and I certainly am willing to email the detailed report to you or anybody else. Today, Nouri al-Maliki, we're fortunate, was replaced. The Iraqi people spoke out and prevented him going for an illegal third term, even though he was supported by the US government and the Iranian regime to do so. But the Iraqi people would not have it. A more moderate person, Haider al-Abadi, has come into power. He has shown himself thus far to be more cooperative and less determined to do the bidding of Tehran. Unfortunately, he has the Badr Corps and General Soleimani and his Quds Force totally infiltrated into the Iraqi government. Prime Minister al-Abadi has a very tough road ahead of him. Friends of the residents, defenders of the residents, American defenders, 34 banded together and wrote a letter to Prime Minister al-Abadi. It addressed the issues at Camp Liberty. It addressed the need for realistic security. It addressed the need for property restitution for the Ashraf property that was left, to get on the national electric grid. Also to get a medical facility at Camp Liberty and to bring justice to the people who committed these murders and these atrocities and replace those people from the gates of Camp Liberty. Some of the people who signed this letter are the greatest men of our generation for fighting for liberty. FBI Director Louis Freeh, Attorney General Michael McCasey, Ambassador John Bolton, General George Casey, who ran the coalition forces in Iraq for many years, former Marine Corps Commandant Jim Conway, Governor Howard Dean, Mayor Rudy Giuliani, former CIA Director Porter Goss, former Speaker House Dennis Hastert, former National Security Advisor, Marine Corps Commandant, and NATO Commander Jim Jones, Ted Kennedy's son, Patrick Kennedy, Senator Joe Lieberman, Governor Ed Rendell, Governor Bill Richardson, who also served as a UN ambassador, General Hugh Shelton, who served as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Senator Robert Torricelli, and numerous officers who served at Camp Liberty. And we are proud, and let's give those men and women a hand for standing up for justice. This letter was sent to Prime Minister al-Abadi by Governor Tom Ridge, who also, Governor Tom Ridge, as well as being the signatory to the letter I just said, sent another letter talking about the illegal, the wrongful detention of Mr. Zachary. Mr. Zachary did not cause an accident. He was the victim of an accident, and now he is the victim of Iranian meddling in Tehran. It is time for al-Abadi to go ahead and bring his own judges under control and tell him to return that man to general population. Once a month, I talk to the residents at Camp Liberty, and I pointed out something and they readily agreed. What is the sense of keeping him in detention outside the camp when the entire camp is a detention center? Let him back with the general population and quit tormenting the residents. It is time for our government to do the harder right over the easier wrong. And I'll tell you right now, one of the reasons there is so much adamant statements that the Iraqi government was not involved in any of those massacres is because there is U.S. law that if a government or an organization uses U.S. military equipment given to them or U.S. training provided to them to commit atrocities, then all future aid will stop. And U.S. State Department doesn't want the aid to stop. They want to keep appeasing the Iraqi government instead of bringing it under control, and they want to keep appeasing the Iranian government. You've got to recognize the genius of the Iranian government right now in something they are doing. We praise the 101st Airborne Division for holding back the German, the Nazi advance at the Battle of the Bulge. One division, 10,000 men against the German army until help could arrive. Well, look at the Iranian government. They're able to run over Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen. General Soleimani is going everywhere causing problems, and yet the Western governments do not do anything because they're tied down to a nuclear weapons negotiation table. And President Rouhani bragged previously how he held down the Western governments under the pretext of negotiations. That's what we have right now, the pretext of negotiations. These nuclear weapons negotiations will ultimately go nowhere, and they will never be honored even if the Iranian government signs it, but they're buying time. And as a result of buying time, they can continue with their hidden research for nuclear weapons, but also Quds Force Commander General Soleimani can export terrorism throughout the Middle East, and Western governments will do nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for this opportunity to speak in front of you, and I thank you for being my brothers and sisters in this fight to help the residents of Camp Liberty and to help our brothers and sisters, the Iraqi citizens, who are going through double tyranny. They're going through the tyranny of ISIS, they're going through the tyranny of the militias coming in behind and killing whoever ISIS did not. It's time for the West to band with the people and stop appeasing corrupt governments. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.